Okay. So with methods are also called as functions. In some of the programming language, it is also called as functions. They are used for reusability of code. Okay, reusability of code, as in if you have written a particular code for some specific action, as in if you want to do addition of two numbers. Okay, so you will write a code for addition of a number, but then those numbers will keep on changing. Okay, you have written a code for adding two numbers. Those two numbers will keep on changing if you want to add two numbers. Okay, so you have to again write the same code again and again. Instead of that, what you can do, you can create a method, or you can say a block containing that particular code, and whenever you want to do that task, you can just call that block. Okay, so that is the reason for creating a method. You don't have to repeat your code again and again. Okay, so redundancy of code has to be stopped. Okay, so let's create a simple class which describes about methods. So I'll say methods example. Okay, main, main itself is a method. Okay, main itself is a method. Now to create a method, there are four portions in a method. You can see over here. Okay, this one is called as access modifier. Okay, this is his access modifier. Access modifier. This is like static or non-static. If you want to keep method as static, you just keep this keyword static. If you don't want to keep method as static, just, oh sorry, if you want to keep it as non-static, just remove this keyword. Okay, with main method you have to write static. So access modifier, so start, this is not mandatory portion. Okay, so I'll just create a non-static method. This actually indicates return data type. So if method performs a particular logic, or it runs a code and it returns a value. Okay, if that method returns a particular value, then that will be coming over here. That is called as return data type. Over here, main method does not return anything. It just performs the logic written inside that method, and that is why it is called as void. Return data type is void because main method does not return anything. Okay, so return data type, and then method name. This could be any name you can, okay, write based on the logic or code you're writing. Then comes your brackets, and inside brackets, if you want some parameter, you can write the parameters. Number of parameters depends upon your usage or requirement. You can have a method without any number of parameters, or you can say zero number of parameters. Okay, but if you want to write a parameter has a data type. So data type, and then variable name or parameter name. Okay, so variable name, it could be an array, it could be a simple variable also. Over here you can see this args, that is arguments, and this is a string array. So data type and then single dimensional array, that way. And then curly braces denote the scope of the method, and inside that code will come. Okay, that is how you define a method. Now let's understand. I have to add two numbers, so I'll say integer number 1 equals 34, comma number 2 equals 54, and I want to add them, so I'll say integer sum equals number 1 plus number 2, and then I'll say this out. Okay, sum, and I'll run this. So it's going to print 88. Okay, that is the value. Now if I want to take another values, if I want to add two another values, so I'll say number 1 equals 56, comma number 2 equals 45. Okay, this way I have to keep semicolon over here, and then again I have to write this portion. Okay, again if I want to print the value, so I'll say this way and I'll execute. So it prints me another addition, a sum of other two numbers. Now if I want to add again another two values, okay, again I have to, okay, initialize them, do the summation, and then print the value. So these lines are unnecessarily getting repeated. The only logic is this one, a single line logic. Okay, right now we are like trying to avoid writing this particular line, single line, multiple number of times. Consider if you are reading an Excel sheet which would be comprising of 10 lines of code to read an Excel sheet. So that 10 lines of code will be repeated if the Excel sheets are different. So for reading of one Excel sheet, you are writing 10 lines of code. For reading another Excel sheet, you are writing another 10 lines of code. So that code is again repeated. So instead of that, we can keep that 10 lines of code in a method, and we can just invoke that method and pass the Excel sheet name as a parameter. Okay, that way. So there you are going to use this concept of methods. So over here we'll understand this portion. So what I will do, I'll just comment out this portion. Okay, and I will say right now access modifier consider public as only. There are actually four different types of access modifier. So public as the very first access modifier, a return data type. Now we will be adding two numbers and we will be storing it in a variable called sum, and that sum variable would be having a data type as integer, and then we will be returning the value of sum. So definitely the return data type becomes integer. So I will say int over here. Method name I'll say addition. Okay, and then parameters, so integer number 1 comma integer number 2, say for example. I'll write the code. I'll say integer sum equals number 1 plus number 2, and then I'll say return sum. Okay, that way. This is nothing but your method. See, it is written outside main method. Main method scope is starting from here up till here, but I'm writing this portion outside the main method. Okay, that you have to remember, because many people write this portion inside the main method also. Okay, so this has to be written outside before the class scope ends. Okay, okay, now I have to call this. So this is a definition of a method, declaration and definition of a method. You have written the code. Now I have to call the method. So what I will do, I will say, okay, for calling a method also we have to create an object of a class. Same we did for variables. Okay, for global variables, if you want to call a non-static variable, I have to create a variable object of a class, right? That we have seen, right? Access global variables. Let's see. So access it using object or instance of a class. That is what we have seen, non-static global variables. Same goes for non-static methods also, right? So I have to create a object. So object can be created by just saying class name, object name equals new class name with parenthesis. Okay, and then I'll say m dot, and then I can access this method. So this method option will come. So it says this is the method name. These are the two parameters. It is accepting two parameters, number 1 and number 2. They are of data types integer, and it returns integer as a data type. Okay, integer value it is returning, and this method belongs to this particular class. So the last portion is your class, return data type, parameters, and method name. This is how you should read this structure. Now I'll just select it. I have to pass the number 1. Okay, so right now we can just say number 1, number 2, because already we have defined it over here. These are local variables for this scope, and whatever value I'm passing, that 34 and 54, okay, that will be passed as a value over here. Okay, so 30 whatever 34 and 54 will be coming over here, adding those values, returning the sum. Now because I'm returning it, I have to catch that value also, because I'm returning it, so I have to store somewhere. Okay, so I'll say integer, I'll take the same data type, oh same variable name, okay. And then if I want to print, I'll just say sys out sum, okay. Now if you want to add another two variables, okay, I'll just say m dot addition, okay. I'll say 34 and I'll say 98, okay, this way. What you can do is you can keep this inside a sysout itself, okay. You can keep this entire portion inside a sysout statement, isn't it? Because this is going to give you some value, returning some value, and that value will be printed out. Need not to store it. You, if you want to do, you can store it also, it's okay. You can just call this method. This is a calling of method. You have to store it in sum, and then you are printing that sum, okay. This is a two steps. But if you want, if I want to avoid this two step, this single step, okay, what I can say, I can just instruct, or let me keep it as it is, control C, and I'll comment this portion, okay. This way also you can write. So in one line, okay, you have done this entire portion. So this is how, okay, this is how you are going to write a method and call a method.